Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees. Here's tonight's top story. The United States finally reopens its borders to travellers from the UK. Thousands of flights are scheduled to take passengers across the Atlantic this month.
I was meant to go just before COVID happened, and obviously it's been delayed this long, so it's really exciting to finally be able to go, yeah.
Also tonight, a group representing terrorist attack survivors and victims' families found nearly 60% of survivors had suffered media intrusion and is calling for a new media code. And an analysis of COP26 delegates found that the fossil fuel industry had over 500 people at the event. The United States reopens its borders to the UK and dozens of other countries. Britons have been banned from visiting the country since early 2020, when the pandemic broke out. People are excited to finally have a chance to visit their family and friends. Airlines are operating thousands of flights between the UK and the US this month. NTD's Joy Duguid has the story.
The US finally reopens its borders to UK visitors today. Thousands of excited travellers are jetting off on transatlantic flights for the first time since early 2020.
Really, really exciting. I mean, I was meant to go just before COVID happened, and obviously it's been delayed this long, so it's really exciting to finally be able to go, yeah.
Yeah, so happy to be getting back to it. For me, it's my first time to the US, so really excited.
Passenger Talia Ware is travelling from Essex to Boston to visit her partner for 3 months.
Excited. It's been a long time, so I think mostly relieved that we have a concrete date, so very happy.
Foreign travellers flying to the US are required to demonstrate proof of vaccination before boarding, as well as proof of a negative COVID-19 test taken within 3 days of flight. Many of them are visiting the US to see their family and friends.
No, we're going to see my nephew, my mum's first grandson. We haven't met him, he's just turned 1, so we're really excited. Haven't seen my brother and sister-in-law for 2 years, so yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing them.
The US reopening its borders is also a significant boost to the travel sector. Airlines have ramped up UK to US flight schedules to meet the increased demand for travel. According to travel data firm Cirium, a total of nearly 3,700 flights are scheduled to operate between the countries this month. That is up 20% compared with October, but remains almost 50% down on pre-pandemic levels.
So when the Biden administration announced that the US border will be opened, we saw a 600% increase. The flights today are full, of course, over the next few days. So it has a major impact between announcement, between the opening and what we're seeing.
To celebrate the end of the travel ban, Virgin Atlantic and British Airways operated a synchronised departure from London. Their aircraft took off from parallel runways at Heathrow at about 8:50 in the morning before flying to New York's JFK Airport. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
Terrorism survivors and families of victims are calling on the media to change the way it reports so as to not add to their pain. The group Survivors Against Terror published a report called A Second Trauma following a 2-year survey. According to the report, nearly 60% of survivors say they had suffered media intrusion. One survivor said that reporters blocked my street, followed me to school, misquoted and harassed my neighbours. The mother of a Manchester Arena bombing victim said a reporter told her 16-year-old daughter of her brother's death on the doorstep. The group is calling on journalists not to contact survivors or victims' family members for at least the first 48 hours after an attack. It also calls on the media not to use victims' photos without the family's permission and for reporters not to gather outside victims' homes. The United Nations Climate Summit COP26 primarily intends to find solutions to reduce fossil fuel exploitation and pollution. But an analysis has found that the fossil fuel industry sent over 500 lobbyists to the summit and has the largest delegation. This means the lobbyists for the fossil fuel sector outnumber any national delegation. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us more.
Environmental NGO, Global Witness and some other organizations analyzed the list of named attendees at COP26, as published by the UN. They found at least 503 fossil fuel lobbyists affiliated with some of the world's biggest oil and gas giants have been granted access to the summit. According to UN data, Brazil has the biggest official team with 479 delegates. The analysis means if the fossil fuel lobby were a country delegation at COP26, it would be the largest one. Global Witness also found over 100 fossil fuel companies are represented at the summit, including Shell, Gazprom and BP. 30 trade associations and membership organizations are also present. Global Witness said 27 official country delegations registered fossil fuel lobbyists including Canada, Russia and Brazil. Global Witness found the fossil fuel lobby at COP is larger than the combined total of the delegations from 8 countries worst affected by the climate change in the last 2 decades. Campaigners say delegates from the fossil fuel industry should be banned. Murray Worthy, gas campaign leader at Global Witness, said, "The case for meaningful global action must not be diverted by a festival of polluters and their mouthpieces." Eddie Aiken, NTD News.
On Sunday, alongside the UN Climate Summit, Taiwan held its own environmental event. Not being a member of the UN, Taiwan couldn't take part in the summit in Glasgow. It came amid reports that some Scottish Labour politicians received letters from the Chinese Consulate in Edinburgh, pressuring them not to attend Taiwan's event. The story comes from NTD's Jane Well.
Reports that some Scottish politicians received a letter from the Chinese Consulate in Edinburgh asking them not to attend a Taiwanese environmental event taking place alongside COP26 in Glasgow. The letter reportedly saying, "The host of events schemingly exploit your capacity as MSP to endorse their independence obsession under the cover of climate cooperation between Taiwan and Scotland. I hope you can see through it and do not attend the Taiwan Day event." Scottish Labour politician Paul O'Kane told LBC Radio he was shocked to receive the letter. It didn't put him off attending. Earlier, at a press briefing after being asked about the Taiwanese event and relations with China, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said this.
On the invitation to the Taiwan Day celebrations, I don't know whether I got that invitation. I'm not aware of it, but I've had a very busy programme around COP, so I've had lots of invitations that sadly I've not been able to accept. I have managed to accept a lot, but I can't do everything and attend everything I'm invited to. I think I did see that one of my SNP colleagues, member of the Westminster Parliament, was attending that, but I'd have to double check whether that was actually the case. On the broader issues, I'm a supporter of the principles of self-determination and human rights generally, but just as I think it's sometimes not helpful for other countries to, sort of say too much about what they think should happen in Scotland, I think it's important that I don't wade into other issues in terms of other parts of the world too specifically during a summit like this. In terms of the trade relationship with China, it's an important trade relationship for Scotland with China. And I have personally visited China to promote Scottish produce, to encourage investment. But like trade relationships across the world, I think we've always got to take care that they are based on the strongest possible ethical underpinning, and that we don't ever lose sight of the importance of human rights considerations in all of these trading relationships. And Scotland will always speak up for human rights in all of the relationships we have across the world.
In other news, London's iconic Regent Street was lined with cars of all types on Saturday. After a 2-year gap, the yearly free-to-view motor show took place. Stylish classics, elegant veteran cars, and even one for the James Bond fans were among many of the cars there. NTD's Neil Wardre was there and tells us more from the event.
Regent Street is renowned for its famous brands, including Hamleys. But for one day a year, they close the road to traffic and play host to the Regent Street Motor Show. Veteran and modern are here, including hydrogen and a car from the latest Bond film. First staged in 2005, the annual Regent Street Motor Show returns. The street, closed from Piccadilly Circus to Oxford Circus, is filled with glittering collections of cars, plus some car-themed family entertainment for young and older. A timeline of automotive evolution are on display, featuring the full spectrum of motoring history. The chairman of the Royal Automobile Club, or RAC, who are the organisers, was on hand to introduce the event to us.
We've got a fabulous display of cars through 3 centuries, starting in the late 1800s and going to the very latest and most current cars.
Some were drawn to this vehicle that some of you might recognise. This is a Land Rover Defender, featured in the latest James Bond film No Time to Die. 10 were produced and unfortunately 8 did die and 2 remained. This is one of them. These versions of the car have to be beefed up for the action-packed car chase and especially for those giant leaps. And here's the power, nitrous oxide, and it's this that helped project the vehicle through the air for 30 metres at 3 metres above the ground. A hydrogen fuel cell car was there, representative of the latest technology.
But to all intents and purposes, it's an electric vehicle. It just stores the energy on board in a different format, so people familiar with standard electric vehicles, there's a big battery in it, the electricity is stored in the battery. On a fuel cell vehicle, there's compressed hydrogen in a tank. The hydrogen is converted to electricity through the fuel stack and drives an electric motor.
The biggest crowd surrounded the veteran cars. This is an 1896 Lutzmann from Germany that was based on a traditional horse-drawn carriage. Celebrating its 125th anniversary, the motor show gives way the next day to a London to Brighton run. Many will take part and were dressed for the occasion, just like this group of 4. The gentleman says he looks after his car by giving it regular runs and attention.
I tinker with it. I've got a little bit of skill that's been passed on from my dad and my other family members, but yeah, I can keep it going, keeping it on the road. They call it sort of greasy rag. Just keep it well oiled, keep it going, and it seems to keep on doing well. It's lasted 120 years, so that's not too bad.
This car is a Renault from 1902. The gentleman told us about the effort it takes to drive these cars, as they didn't have the modern clutch system as used in today's manual vehicles.
Difficult to drive, not easy, like a crash box. So you're grating gears half the time, trying to get them into gear. There's no synchromesh on these at all. That wasn't invented till the 60s, was it, I believe, somewhere.
Those on the London to Brighton run are all geared up with their cars and clothing. We wish them a good trip. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
Still to come, Polish troops at the border with Belarus are firing tear gas at migrants who are attempting to force their way in using bolt cutters and shovels. Poland's government says 15,000 migrants are gathered there trying to enter the EU illegally. That and more after the break. The Polish government today released videos of migrants trying to force through the Belarus border and Polish troops pushing them back with tear gas. Poland has stationed 12,000 troops on the border with Belarus as migrants attack the border with wire cutters and shovels. Warsaw and the European Union accuse Belarus leader Alexander Lukashenko of sending African and Middle Eastern migrants over the border as revenge for previous EU sanctions. NTD's Joy Duguid brings us this report.
The Polish border guard says up to 15,000 migrants are at the Belarus-Poland border trying to force their way in. The Polish Ministry of Interior published a video on its Twitter page on Monday, showing Polish guards squaring up to migrants behind barbed wire. Soldiers spray migrants with tear gas as they attempt to cut through the border fence into Poland. The Polish defence minister says more than 12,000 troops are now at the border and more are on alert. The European Commission says in recent weeks, Polish authorities have reported over 3,000 crossing attempts every week.
This is a continuation of the desperate attempt by the Lukashenko regime to use people as pawns to destabilize the European Union and, of course, the values that we stand for. And we have repeatedly, firmly rejected attempts to instrumentalize people for political purposes.
Since the summer, Poland has been under increasing pressure as migrants from the Middle East and Africa try to cross into the EU through Belarus. Poland's border guard has reported incidents of hostile behaviour and threats by Belarusian forces.
Attention, the police inform. Illegal border crossing is forbidden. You will face criminal charges. Attention, attention.
Warsaw and the EU say it's an organised action by the Belarusian government aimed at destabilising the bloc in retaliation for Western sanctions. Belarus has accused Poland of abusing migrants at the border. Latvia, which shares a border with Belarus, called the situation alarming. And Lithuania said it is moving additional troops to its Belarus border to prepare for a surge in migrant crossings. Joy Dugid, NTD News.
Staying in Poland, hundreds of workers from Poland's energy sector protested outside the European Union's office in Warsaw on Saturday, blaming soaring energy prices on the EU's moves to discourage coal use. Trade union leaders say the EU's energy policies will harm Poland's economy. We've got more from NTD's Lily Jo.
Some 200 power plant and coal mine workers from across Poland protested against the government's decision to phase out coal plants amid soaring energy prices. Blowing horns and waving union flags, their campaign slogan was, "Yes to Poland's energy sovereignty, no to high energy and heating prices."
Why should we not use our resources? Why shouldn't we base our economy on what we have in the country? Why should we be dependent on a gas tap that someone will turn on or off, depending on whether we are polite or transfer taxes to neighbouring countries? We cannot allow this.
The sector is a major employer in Poland, with the country getting more than half of its electricity from black and brown coal. Some are worried about unemployment.
Transformation, yes, but under fair conditions. Calm, slow, such that you can replace every job that is about to be liquidated with a job in a related industry, where you earn similarly, where you have similar respect and prestige, and not low-quality jobs.
Poland has pledged to phase out coal use by 2049. Like other EU member nations, the focus will be on developing wind, solar, and other renewable energy sources instead. Lily Jo, NTD News.
Going to Spain, Spaniards are also feeling the pinch as they see their utility bills skyrocket. Several hundred in Barcelona came out in protest on the weekend. Electricity prices in Spain have risen over 400% this year. The government response so far was not able to stem the trend. This report comes from NTD's Ana Rodriguez.
Hundreds of people marched through Barcelona last weekend, protesting against rises in the price of electricity.
Not only are we angry, we also feel cheated, because in the end the problem is that the energy companies don't feel empathy towards the citizens, and we think that they are literally robbing us, literally.
Electricity costs in Spain have gone up over 400% this year. This largely as a result of a global wholesale energy price crunch, especially natural gas.
We are talking about basic needs. We need electricity for hygiene and nutrition. And it's incredible that the oligopoly of the energy companies should have this kind of control over the prices.
Spain relies more than other countries in Europe on energy imports. In response to the hikes, the Spanish government since the summer has passed regulatory changes like tax cuts. But the Prime Minister in October said the measures have caused more harm than good. Official figures show consumer prices in Spain increased in October by the highest rate in 29 years, largely as a result of soaring electricity costs. Due to increased demand in winter, they are expected to keep rising. Ana Rodriguez, NTD News.
Staying in Spain, an award-winning Spanish baker who was recently crowned World's Best Baker has appealed to his government to lower taxes on electricity. He has seen his electricity bill double. Rising prices on energy have been putting small and artisan businesses at risk of losing their livelihoods. NTD's Eddie Aiken has more for us.
Spanish baker Domi Vallès is a fifth-generation baker. The business began with his great-grandfather 120 years ago. He now runs artisan bakeries Vallès' Oven, employing 12 people and producing 33 different kinds of bread in the southern Spanish city of Lebrija, near Seville. He was awarded the top prize at the World Baker Awards in Munich in October.
Very proud and excited about it. I think it is an award to 5 generations of bakers we've had in the family, and the prize is also for them. It's the excitement and pride of a family tradition, working with a product that we feel is ours. So it was very emotional when we were chosen as the world's best baker in 2021.
Now, however, Vallès says his promising operation may be undermined by soaring global energy costs and decades of high inflation in Spain.
We do not have the means to be able to counteract this type of rise, and we end up having to raise the cost of the product with all that implies. It's another spanner in the works for the artisan.
His electricity bills have doubled to over £1,700 a month. The cost of cereals for his loaves have jumped this month for the third time this year, and surging fuel price rises have hit delivery costs.
It could be countered by lowering taxes, and I'm very sure about this. There are lots of taxes on electricity. It's in the government's hands to start lowering taxes to consumers because it's a common good.
The government in September announced caps on gas prices. It cut its special electricity tax to 0.5% to mitigate the impact of rising energy prices on consumers. But some of the steps have yet to be reflected in bills. Some consumer groups are calling for further tax cuts to household income. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
To France now, where parents in Paris have been protesting against COVID measures in schools. Since returning to school in September, French pupils were told to wear masks and advised to get vaccinated. The mask mandate was lifted for most areas in October, but now some areas are bringing it back. For some parents, the push to vaccinate children is also causing concern. This story comes from NTD's France correspondent, David Vivez.
Masks are back at primary schools in certain areas of France. The French government spokesperson said the stricter rules will be implemented in departments where COVID-19 cases had risen above 50 per 100,000 inhabitants. Dozens of protesters demonstrated against this measure and also against vaccines being pushed on children. Children over the age of 12 in France required to have a health pass to participate in daily activities such as sports. The health pass serves as proof of vaccination, a negative COVID test, or a recent recovery from COVID.
The measures are not proportional to the pandemic. We've also seen some children get myocarditis after the jab, so the benefit of a vaccine is not clear.
The protesters, many of whom are parents, say that the government's measures regarding to children take the responsibility away from them.
They say they should be the only ones to decide what's good for their children.
There really is government interference in family matters. For example, if one parent wants their child to be vaccinated but the other refuses, the child can be vaccinated. In some cases, this has terrible consequences.
Flore Lelache is a Versailles-based lawyer who works with families who have issues with school mandates. She supports this particular point, saying she's seen heartbreaking situations where children don't want the vaccine but are forced to get it.
There's the issue of parental consent. The children are given a health ID, which allows them to get the jab even without their parents knowing it.
The French government has so far rejected a vaccine mandate for children, but health pass requirements can severely limit the activities of those who are unvaccinated. Officials in charge of the vaccination campaign say they'll look at the situation in the US and may consider implementing a mandate in the future. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa is one of the most well-known paintings in the world. The original portrait is displayed in the Louvre Museum and not up for sale. But a 400-year-old faithful copy will be sold at auction in Paris tomorrow. The auctioneer hopes it will fetch at least £130,000. NTD's Joy Duguid has the story.
A copy of Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, dating from more than 400 years ago, will go under the hammer at a Paris auction on Tuesday. Art Curial auction house expert and auctioneer Matteo Fournier said this copy is so similar to the original that it's likely the artist had close access to Leonardo's version.
We know of several 17th century Mona Lisa copies, some of them French, but this one stands out because of the high level of craftsmanship and its faithfulness, notably when it comes to the sfumato of Mona Lisa's face.
Fournier said Da Vinci was already very famous and sought after in his own time. The French King Francis I saw the works of Da Vinci when he conquered Milan in 1515. The king was so impressed that he invited the 64-year-old artist to work for him in France.
He had fans because he invented a style. He had followers, imitators, and above all, very powerful sponsors who paid a very high price for his artworks.
Leonardo's original Mona Lisa was bought by Francis I. It's in Paris's Louvre Museum and is not for sale. In June, a European collector bought a 17th century copy for £2.5 million at an auction at Christie's in Paris, setting a new record for a reproduction of the work.
The Mona Lisa is the most beautiful woman in painting. It is the most well-known painting in the history of Western art. So obviously, it speaks to everybody. It is the only painting you can talk about on the radio and that you don't need to describe to have a discussion about it.
The auction house estimates the copy for auction this week will fetch between £130,000 and £170,000. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
That's the news for today. Have a good evening.